من دامونا تعاونی هستم. 9 سالم بود مادرم.
My name is Damuna Tawani. I was 9 years old. My mother told me that my father was executed. Since I was 7, I used to hear the news of the executions, and I was familiar with the issue. So when I heard that my father was arrested, I thought that he will be executed. Along with my father, tens of thousands of the MEK members were executed. Each and every one of them were brought to the death commission, a kangaroo trial that lasted only for a minute, and they were asked as if they're still steadfast in supporting the MEK. I later wrote a letter to those who were released from prison asking them if any of them knows my father. Someone responded to me saying that Amir, my father, and I were cellmates in Evin prison. While I was waiting to go to the death commission, I remember Amir being dragged out of the courtroom along with a few others. And I saw from under my blindfold that Raisi and Pur Mohammadi, with several other RGC members, brutally took Amir to the execution hall. Someone who was sitting right beside me told me Amir also kept his vow in supporting his ideals. It was then that I realized that each and every of the MEK members who were executed, they were asked whether they still support the MEK, and they staunchly supported the organization. This is Mohsen Mohammad Bagher, standing in the line to be executed. He was paralyzed since his birth through his 2 legs. While he was a child, he was an actor, playing in several movies. And in the film of The Stranger and the Fog, he played as a paralyzed kid. And at the end of the movie, he was killed by some figures who were black-hearted and wearing black. When he was a young man, he became a very courageous supporter of the MEK with a lot of potential, courageous and steadfast. When he was in prison, he was a symbol of courage and alacrity, reaching his height of intelligence and a symbol of his spirit. Years before reaching his age of 30, he was perished during the 1988 massacre in Gohardash prison. He staunchly supported his ideals. When he was taken to the death commission, the death commission, including Raisi, asked him, "What is your accusation?" And he said proudly that I am a supporter of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran. And the death commission saw him as a symbol of a steadfast supporter of the MEK, whom Khomeini had declared hostiles, ordering their mass murder. When Hamid Nouri, the torturer in Gohardash prison, called his name for executions, seemingly Mohsen Mohammad Bagher, who was paralyzed, flew like a bird to the skies. My name is Hengame Haji Hassan. I was a nurse in Sina Hospital in Tehran, and I was arrested in 1981 for supporting the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, and I spent 3 years in Evin and Ghazalazar prisons. For the mullahs ruling Iran, women are not even considered human beings, let alone that a woman chooses to resist against these fanatics. For this reason, female prisoners, supporters of the MEK, were under severe torture. One of the tortures that Haj Davud, a notorious torturer, along with Lajevardi, the butcher of Evin, invented, was called the cage. This torture in Ghazalazar prison was a place 50 centimeters by 50, and I was there for 8 months in those boxes, and we were not allowed to talk, to sleep, to cough, to move, and we had to crouch while blindfolded for hours without having the possibility to see the outside world. And they wanted to break our spirit. Despite all these tortures, as I said, many of the prisoners resisted, and it was the torturers who were broken at the end. Those who thought that they can break us, like Lajevardi and Haj Davud. They were the one that they lost their nerves at the end of the day, and they couldn't see how women bravely resisted all of those tortures. In 1988, almost all of those people that were my cellmates in cage were executed, including my dear friend, Shekare Mohammed Zadeh, and she was under torture for 7 years, from this cell to that. She was also in a place called residential area, under severe tortures, and she couldn't even tell us what they have done to her. She was perished in the 1988 massacre. Shame on a regime that brutally massacred women and tortured women who supported the MEK. My name is Kobra Jokar. I spent 6 years in prisons of the mullah's regime. When I was arrested, the night that the RAGC members raided our house, while they saw that I was pregnant, they started beating me and arrested me and took me to prison. While in prison, while I was wounded, I gave birth to my child. There, we didn't have milk or any food or nutrition for the children. My cellmates, they used to give me their portion of sugar cubes, 2 sugar cubes per day to me, so I can help my child. In the general cell, along with my child, 50 other children were there. They had lost their mothers or their fathers, or both. One day, the guard opened our cell and gave me an infant that was around 3 to 4 months old. The guard tossed the children to the arms of one person who was about to die due to starvation and sickness. Along with my own child, I took care of that person. That child has grown up and is right now beside me, fighting with this regime.
من به همراه نوزاد خودم به او هم رسیدگی کردم. اون کودک الان بزرگ شده و همرزم منه.
My name is Sabir Ahmadi. 5 members of my family were murdered by this mullah's regime. My uncle was killed in broad daylight in 1981, and my mother was killed in 1982 in a house where she was. 2 of my uncles were executed during the 1988 massacre, and my father was killed during the massacre of Ashraf residents in Iraq in 2013. When my mother was murdered, they took me to the prison, and there I was raised by another mother who had a child around my age. And while I was in prison, she used to take care of me. After that, I spent 4 years in the prison, and my grandmother took me under her wings out of the prison. And while I was with my grandmother, I used to study mechanical engineering and professionally played soccer. Finally, at one point, I decided to follow the path of my mother and other martyrs of my family, and I joined the MEK. And right now, I'm very happy to be alongside of the same mother who raised me in prison in those hard times, saving my life.
همون مادری هستم که سالیان قبل در سخت‌ترین شرایط از من نگهداری کرد و جون منو نجات داد.